Have you noticed a lot of these YouTube mini painters ranting and raving about these lacquer-based primers? My recent primer test that I did and put a video up on kind of backs up the claims that they make on these lacquer-based paints. Links up in the corner, BT-dub. But one thing they often don't talk about or show in their videos is how to properly clean your airbrush after using said products. Welcome traveler, I'm Enslow and you found your way to Wily Wizard. In this video, I'm going to show you how to properly clean your airbrush after using lacquer-based paints. A long time ago, I had quite a ridiculous electronics teacher, and he always loved to call preventative maintenance pure magic. And honestly, when it comes to airbrushing, I don't think you could get any closer to the truth. These days, I call it prestidigitation. A simple cantrip I use to keep my tools clean for the real work ahead. Following the steps in this video to keep your airbrush clean is also going to prevent a very common thing I see on Reddit where someone will post a picture of their gnarly, paint-layered covered airbrush with the title, "Why Won't It Spray?" Anyway, if you want to know more about what's coming up on this channel, stick around to the end of the video. I'm going to cover more details about a series I'm working on called AIRBRUSH Unchained. Otherwise, let's dig in. First off, let's talk about what not to use. Traditional airbrush cleaners, they work fine for acrylics, but lacquer paints just kind of laugh at them. Odorless mineral spirits? Yeah, kind of same deal. Unless you want to scrub your brush for eternity, I'm going to say that's a hard pass. 99% ISO is better than the other two, but still, you're going to spend way too much time cleaning. And something like this Mr. Color leveling thinner, yeah, it would definitely work and get the paint off quickly, but because everybody's hyping these products so much, it's made them pretty rare and therefore expensive, so I would reserve that for mixing paints and get something that's a lot cheaper and widely available. The best product for cleaning your airbrush after using lacquer-based paint is lacquer thinner. Go figure, right? Primarily used as a thinner for lacquer paints, it's ideal for cleaning your airbrush as well. You can get this stuff at just about any hardware store, and it typically comes in two flavors, regular lacquer thinner and an eco-friendly version. I've tested both extensively for cleaning an airbrush, and honestly, the eco-friendly version cleans just as well. I've also found that if you're going to use these products to thin your lacquer-based paints, that the eco-friendly version dries a little bit slower, giving it somewhat of a leveling property, which is always a great thing. On top of all that, it's a little bit better for your lungs and the planet, and it costs the same, so it just seems like the best choice. But here's the thing, y'all, lacquer thinner is powerful stuff. It contains VOCs, volatile organic compounds, which are nasty chemicals you definitely don't want to inhale. And if you didn't notice the huge warning label on the can of lacquer thinner, this stuff is highly flammable, so give it the respect that it deserves. Always wear a respirator with proper P100 filters when you have an open container of lacquer thinner about, and it's vital to ensure that you have proper ventilation in your workspace. Seriously, you don't want to be breathing this in, turning your brain smooth, and making people think that you're a paint huffer. So stay safe and keep your reputation intact. Before cracking open that lacquer thinner, let's protect the workspace. Lacquer thinner has extremely low surface tension, so drops, drips, and jar rings are pretty common. It'll strip varnish and paint right off of your desk surface, and even painted lines right off of a cutting mat. So we want to use something protective like a silicone baking mat such as this, or a scrap piece of cardboard or plywood. Trust me, your hobby desk, your hobby space, and whoever you share your home with will thank you later. Let's talk about the kit that I used during this process. The first thing that you're going to need is a sturdy jar. Something short and wide with a wide mouth, like an old relish jar, to efficiently recycle your thinner. Another vital tool for this process is a glass pipette with a rubber bulb. If you try to use a cheap plastic pipette, the thinner is likely to eat through it pretty quickly and you'll just have to trash it. So that's not really a great option. Also, this glass pipette with a rubber bulb has a bit more volume, which is going to really help out during the process. And finally, some more traditional airbrush cleaning tools like some brushes, a lint-free towel, Q-tips, and we might use a nozzle cleaning tool. I'm going to show you how to clean a Iwata Eclipse, but the same principles apply to all airbrushes. If the paint has dried and locked the needle in your airbrush, add a couple drops of lacquer thinner into the paint cup, let it sit briefly, and gently rotate the needle until it breaks free. Otherwise, carefully remove the needle from the back of the airbrush and set it aside. Next, remove the front end components and inspect them. Any parts with paint, especially the nozzle, go straight into a small clear container like a mini beaker. You'll notice that I have 2 jars of lacquer thinner, one that is clean and one that is dirty. I'll take some lacquer out of the clean jar with a pipette and put it into the mini beaker. If you don't have a mini beaker, a shot glass works just as well. With the needle and front end removed from the airbrush, hold the airbrush body directly over your recycling jar and flush lacquer thinner through it using the pipette. This recycling method greatly reduces waste and is something that I got inspiration from watching oil painters. They tend to clean their brushes in a big jar of odorless mineral spirits, which they tend to keep around. One relish jar of lacquer thinner ended up lasting me about a year, which only cost about $3. When you're flushing the airbrush with the pipette, make sure that the front of the airbrush is angled downward. If the rear of the airbrush is tilted down, there's a big possibility that the lacquer thinner will flow back into the trigger mechanism, which is not a good deal. Once you've flushed all the visible paint from the airbrush body, use the lint-free cloth to wipe the paint cup out. With all the paint flushed from the airbrush body, scrub the internal needle passages with a brush. You're going to want to do that all the way up to the needle packing seal, which is just behind the paint cup. The brush will break free any residue that's left over from the flushing process. With the internal passages scrubbed, you're going to want to do a final flush with some clean thinner. Personally, I like to keep a second jar of clean thinner around. That way I can do that final flush, which will slowly replenish the dirty jar. With the Iwata Eclipse, use a pointy Q-tip for the front needle passage to ensure that you get a great seal with the nozzle. Just avoid or be really careful using a Q-tip inside the paint cup or the front end on a lot of airbrushes. With the insides of the airbrush body clean, use a lint-free cloth with a little bit of lacquer thinner on it to wipe down the outside of the airbrush body. Don't go overboard with the lacquer thinner here. You really don't want a lot of it on the lint-free cloth. Give the paint cup one last wipe down with a lint-free cloth and then inspect the airbrush body for any remaining paint. At this point, remove the nozzle and any other front-end components from the small beaker. If they have paint residue on them, you can use a soaked Q-tip to clean off any of those components. Clean the nozzle by first using a brush and then using a needle or nozzle cleaner to clean the last bit of the tip out. Once you've disrupted the paint in the nozzle, flush thinner through it with your glass pipette. If you get a smooth, straight stream, your nozzle's clean. To begin the reassembly process, group the front end components and prepare them for reattaching them to the airbrush body. Carefully reattach the front end components to the airbrush body, ensuring that the nozzle is centered. Doing this with the airbrush body in a vertical position will help center the nozzle. Clean the needle using a soaked Q-tip or a paper towel. The important thing here is to make sure that you never draw or push the paper towel once you get close to the tip, because you don't want to stab yourself or you don't want to push the tip into something and bend it. So always draw away when you get close to the tip. Give the needle a final wipe with a lint-free cloth and then reinsert it into the airbrush body from the back. Gently slide the needle forward till it stops and then tighten the needle chucking nut. Complete the reassembly by attaching the rear handle. If you're bizarre like me, check the alignment of the rear handle and then give the trigger a few squeezes to ensure that everything is working properly. Dump any remaining thinner from your small container back into the dirty jar, seal it tightly, and clean the workspace. Every once in a while, I like to wash my airbrushing tools in some nice warm soapy water to get any leftover residue out of them. And one thing to remember, lacquer thinner can damage certain seals in an airbrush, especially rubber ones. Rubber seals are generally black, and if you get any lacquer thinner on them, immediately rinse them down with some water or airbrush cleaner and then dry them out. Never pour thinner down drains or throw thinner soaked rags into a trash can. If you need to dispose of some dirty thinner, place that into a solvent-resistant open-top container and let it evaporate outdoors. Once the thinner has completely evaporated, you can just throw the container away with the waste in it. That's the ritual. It's not glamorous, but it keeps the magic flowing. They say an ounce in maintenance equals a pound in repair. And when it comes to airbrushing, they might be underselling it a bit. Clean tools aren't just easier to use, they teach you patience, precision, and care. This is the foundation. Because what comes next in the Airbrush Unchained series asks more of you. A full primer showdown, Zenithal highlighting with a white paint comparison, advanced contrast techniques, gradient smoothing and feathering, and finally, spraying color straight onto the Mini. If you're with me, hit subscribe. I'll keep the candles burning and throw another log on the fire. The links to all the stuff I use in this video are in the description below. Using them won't cost you anything extra, but it supports the channel and the work I do here. Whether you know me as Winslow Greymane, the Wily Wizard, or Night Owl Forge, you can always count on me to honor the craft, question the hype, and share the parts that no one else talks about. Until next time, keep refining, keep maintaining, and stay inspired.